Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to our next session, which is our Creative Freelancers session. Just a reminder that lunch is after this, so make your way up to the balcony foyer to have some delicious food. So, in a moment, I'm going to introduce Angela Lamont, who's going to chair this session. But first, we're going to watch a short film about who you're about to meet.
When I started out, I thought I had to set up a company. I had to set up an agency or appear bigger than I was. But actually, I think people buy into people. They like to work with a person. They like to see you and your work.
Delivering things on time, doing what you say you will do, being pleasant to work with, being reasonably sociable, and then people want to work with you again.
I think there are very distinct opposites from what you need for being a creative freelancer. On the one hand, you need to be incredibly creative, and you do need to, because you need to stand out in the market. But on the other hand, you need to be incredibly disciplined, because there's a lot of competition out there on the market, and these are for a lot of creative people, two very, very different aspects of personality. You do need to be able to split yourself down the middle.
Absolutely wish that somebody had told me that it's okay to not be busy.
Having people see my work and like it is the best thing in the world for me.
Freelancers Ask Us Anything session. I'm Angela Lamont, and I'm a freelancer. Yeah. I'm also so glad to be here in person. I don't know if any of you came to the Spark 2020, which was a lovely in-person event. We planned stuff, we were going to meet up, life intervened. But the story I want to share with you today, and I want to get you sharing back, is it all started at Spark 2021. Yes, the online one, where we met people online. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today and answering your questions. So a year ago, I put out an appeal at Spark 21 because I'd been contacted to make a free course, yes, free course for creative freelancers just like us. And it was the Open University. So I put out an appeal for freelancers who would come and chat with us and share their wisdom for this course. So here we are. We decided to make it happen, and a year later, somewhat delayed by COVID and the fact we couldn't do any filming or anything, the course is launched just. It's there for you. I will tell you all about it later. But it's getting on for about 1,000 people have signed up now. And originally, to do that course, I was asked to go to London to do the filming, because there's a lot of creatives in London, right? And I sort of refused, because I'm from Warwickshire, and I know what a rich seam of creatives there are right here in Warwickshire. And I knew that Spark would help me find them. So I put out an appeal and absolutely got lots of responses. The freelancers in Warwickshire, the creatives in Warwickshire, many of them are freelance, if not most. And I was absolutely overwhelmed by how generous you all were to give your time to help people like yourself, and then draw on the collective wisdom of other people giving their wisdom back to you. And this is the beauty of the course. It's made by people who are different to you, because all of us creative freelancers have our own way of doing stuff. And yet we share so much in common. I admit, before we started making the course, I didn't realize quite how much we might have in common. But the people who came forward really proved that to me. So during the filming, I met 11 wonderful Warwickshire human beings who also happened to be creative freelancers. They were actors and artists and writers and makers and creators. And they all shared their collective wisdom. But when we got chatting, we basically all said the same things. I wish there had been a course like this when we started, because it was hard. And you do the free council or chamber workshop of how to set up a business, and that's great. But then the next day you are in business. And then it's, what next? And who do I go to for support and training? And how do I get on with this freelancer business and not just survive, but thrive at it? So when I was talking to these amazing 11 human beings, we confessed that we had all made our mistakes, and plenty of them. We had all felt a little bit on our own. And we just would have liked to have a bit more support, networking, training. And even if it's just having a cup of coffee with someone and saying, oh, someone hasn't paid me, what do you do when that happens? Those are real-life freelancer problems, right? And as freelancers, because we do such different stuff, we can feel quite isolated and we can feel quite alone. And the time is coming, I think, when we need to get it together a bit more and say, actually, I do something very different to you, but I'm more like you than you might think. So I'm about to be joined by 4 pretty awesome creatives. And between us, we clock up quite a few decades of experience. I was counting it up. I think it might be almost 9 decades between us. And some of the panel members are quite young, so some of us have clocked up quite a few decades more. So if you are here today, if you are thinking of going freelance but you haven't taken the plunge yet, this is for you. If you have found yourself being freelance and you want to really thrive on it and love it and not just survive at it, this is for you. And if you work for an organisation who thinks they would like to work with freelancers but they're not quite sure how that works, this is for you. But this session also relies on you sticking your hand up and asking the questions as well. So get your questions ready. Now, I went freelance in my 20s, contrary to my mother's advice, obviously. She said I might miss the British Gas Company car and the British Gas Company pension and the British Gas Company healthcare scheme. And so I told her that I'd never had a gap year, and I was just going to have a gap year. And in fact, I did go out and sort of set up another job for the end of the year and said, if I went and played for a year at being a creative, would you still have me? And they said, oh, yeah. So I did. And it went quite well. So I took another gap year. I'm in my 27th gap year, and I'm quite liking this. So every day is a day full of exploration and creativity, and yes, sometimes banging my head against a brick wall till it bleeds, but is that freelance life or is that freelance life? Exactly. So I founded a film and animation company called Chaos Films. And I work with the most talented bunch of other freelancers that you could possibly imagine from all over the UK, literally Brighton to Orkney. I work with freelancers. And each one of them is incredibly talented at what they do. And I don't do those things. But together, we can take on the most exciting and amazing projects because we all feel stronger and more capable working together. And we collaborate with different people at different times on different projects, and that's how it all hangs together. I couldn't dream of doing these things alone, and now I wouldn't want to. But when I first went freelance, I was alone. I was a sole trader. So that's what it means, isn't it? That you are on your own. Well, not necessarily. There are different ways of doing stuff. And the 4 panelists who are about to join me on stage all have their own completely different freelance stories. They're doing different things in different ways, and it's working. And sometimes it doesn't work, and we rethink it, and we muddle through. And again, welcome to freelance life if you've just joined it. So they're doing things in their own way. So please welcome to the stage Cassie Leedham, Matt Katz, Rebecca Harling, and Terri Brown. So, first off, I've said a little bit about me. Can you let everybody know who you are and what you do and how freelance life has been for you so far in about 5 words? So we're going to start off in order. So, Cassie.
Hi, I'm Cassie Leedham. I describe myself as a multidisciplined creative, mostly because I can't really make my mind up about what it is I want to do with my life. But being freelance means that I get to be an artist, a photographer, illustrator, graphic designer, and graphic design is what I trained in.
And this is all your work.
It is.
And, in fact, it's outside.
I've got to stand outside.
She's got to stand outside, folks.
You can see it in the flesh.
So as well, when you've had your mookie lunch, go and see Cassie. And that's your studio, Cassie, isn't it?
Yeah, so I work from a studio in Stratford at the Courtyard Gallery. I was awarded that space after producing an exhibition of artwork during lockdown. And I hadn't really painted much before, but I started oil painting during lockdown to keep sane and ended up doing an exhibition about motherhood. And I painted portraits of other mums that had had children during lockdown. And that led to me getting awarded a little studio space at the Courtyard Gallery in Stratford, and that's what I'm up to now, mostly.
She also does a very good line in time-lapse videos, which I'm addicted to,
Yeah.
so do find her on social media. Okay, so next, Matt, can you tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah. We run my VT. I'll talk over the second half.
Weren't expecting that, were you?
Teletubbies! So Richie Webb and I have been making music for 30 years together and mostly getting paid for it. We started in radio and have been doing songs and underscore for TV, film and games and have been lucky enough to work on some fantastic kids and light entertainment shows. In 2019 we were finally trusted with doing the score for a feature film, and I also edit for radio and sing the features. Edit for radio and produce ADR and voiceover for film and TV.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Rebecca.
Hi, I'm a graphic designer, artist and illustrator. I have been freelance on my own since 2018, but I have been a business owner for 15 years. I focused on creative direct mail and hand fulfillment and built that business up. Because I wanted freedom and flexibility, I thought, okay, I'll build my own business. It's a bit like Cassie was saying at the start of the intro video, but actually realised that I was losing touch with my creativity for my own sanity. So I sold that business on and decided to focus on delivering the services for businesses as just myself, and definitely something that I would not look back on now. I think I've made myself unemployable. I'm very, very happy to have the freedom and flexibility that I get as a freelance creative.
Brilliant, thank you. And Terri.
Hi. I feel a little bit underqualified to be on this panel right now, but I'm a writer. I'm now a published author as well. I'm also a voice artist. I worked on the radio for a long time, and I went into just doing voice work. It was in February of 2020, so my timing was a tiny bit off on that one. So I've had to adjust my thinking a little bit on that. I went into being a freelancer through necessity rather than a choice. But again, like you said, I think I'm pretty much made myself unemployable now. And yeah, freelancer is what I'm going to be forever.
funny, whenever you talk to freelancers, they always say, oh, I'm unemployable now, which means I'm actually having a great time being a freelancer, and you don't have the budget to employ me, which is great. Thank you very much. So that's our panel, and yes, you are qualified to be on this panel. We all meet other freelancers and get that sort of inferiority complex, don't we? Because what everybody else does seems to be so terribly glamorous compared to what we do.
Constant feeling of being a charlatan.
We do it every day. Now, you can tell that none of us are what you would call experts in business. Although at the end of the session, I will be pointing you to some expert sources as well. So if you are starting out, or if you have a particular problem that you need sorting out, then feel free to go to the expert sources that I will point you to later. What we're here for is to make you feel like you're not alone, make you feel like there are other freelancers in Warwickshire that you can talk to, but we haven't been getting together, and we do share these similar problems. But we're not here today to tell you the right way to do something. And in fact, we'll all happily admit, won't we, to getting things wrong. And even between us, we can't represent all the different types of creative that there are in Warwickshire. But the beauty of being freelance is that you could ask us today how we do something. We could give you 5 answers. All 5 answers could work, because the beauty of being a freelancer is there are many right ways to do something. Lots of ways to get it right. And when you start out, it's easy to think there's one way to get it right. You have to find that way, and you have to do it that way. I think we'll happily smile and say, we've all found our own ways. So today, I want you to just sort of talk to us, ask us your questions, tell us what you spend your time thinking about, worrying about, spending time trying to find out and you can't find out the information, and we will tell you our experiences. It could be how we got it right, it could be how we got it wrong. I think a lot of the time it might be how we muddled through and got there in the end. And that's why it's important for freelancers to get there, because sometimes you might be muddling through something that lots of people have muddled through before you. So, firstly, can I have a show of hands as to who here today will put up their hand and admit, like I did earlier, that you're a freelancer? Oh, yeah. Quite a lot. Fabulous. Thank you very much. And I mean, you could be anything. You could be a maker of things, you could be a performer, you could be a digital artist, you could be a makeup artist, a milliner. I don't know what you could be. There are many different kinds of creatives. And are any of you either just starting out or thinking of making that leap to self-employment? A few tentative hands going up there. Right. So, for now, we will talk newbie for a few minutes, and then we'll go on and talk to more experienced freelancers as well. David has very kindly promised to man the chuckable microphone. Have you met the chuckable microphone yet? So his aim is better than mine anyway. So what I want to do is share a few stories with you of how we started out. I've shared mine a little bit. And then get your hands up and ask us what it's really like, okay? And we had different ways of setting out, didn't we? So I'm going to ask the panel to share some stories. Cassie, would you start off? Because you headed straight to self-employment, didn't you?
Did,
you didn't go
yeah.
via employment at all.
No, well, I was employed before I went to university, briefly, and quickly realised that wasn't for me. And when I went to university, I started working as a self-employed person while I was still studying. And I very much knew that was the path I wanted to take. So as I transitioned out of university, I already had some clients. I already sort of was able to go straight into being self-employed, and I set up a creative collective with other people from Coventry and some people from the university. And we got a very cheap workspace, and we shared it, and we worked on projects together. And it was a fantastic way to start, because you weren't alone. You had people around you that would work with you and support you, and you could complain to and get advice from. Some of the people that I worked with were a little bit more experienced, but not a lot, and some, were starting out like me. And it was great. It was a really nice way to start.
So my collaborating started later. Your collaborating
I've gone the
started
other way,
from
yeah.
the get-go, and now you're working
Now I work
more on your
in the
own.
shed.
Yeah. Okay.
Very
So briefly, how was it for you, Matt? Do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I've never had a real job either. Whilst at university, I was at Warwick. I also failed to move more than a few miles away from my university town. I was in many of the drama societies and ended up being musical director of shows. I accidentally went to the same university as my good friend Richie, who you saw in the studio pic of us, and we were in several failed bands. Realised we weren't going to be pop stars, and wanted to find a way of keeping music and performance in our lives and trying to turn that into something that would sustain us financially. So we produced music for shows at Warwick, and also there was a comedy group that Richie was in, and they went up to Edinburgh and we did all of their music. Fortunately, they ended up getting a Radio 4 series, so we did the music for that show, kicked down every door on the light entertainment corridor as it was back in the 90s, and did lots of work for nothing or for 50 quid.
Did you always happen to be just lurking in the tea bar? Because at the BBC, that's how a lot of stuff happens. You're just lurking in
just trying to find out what's being made and what pilots were happening and offering to do stuff. So we did some pilot shows for a guy called Anil Gupta, and he called us back 6 months later saying he had a show transferring from radio to telly. Would we help out? And that was Goodness Gracious Me. So we ended up doing 3 seasons of Goodness Gracious Me songs and incidental music on that.
I think we can say you were established by then.
Well, and then it's a case of, as the clip of me in the little VT said, just being personable, being nice to work with, doing what you're going to say, what you say you're going to do, and delivering it on time, and then you get asked back and referred. So that was it. And we did lots of radio to start with, and that led to more light entertainment on telly. And yeah,
cool.
So, but also the guys who'd been in the comedy show ended up with a slot on what was then Saturday morning kids TV.
Yeah. So your customers take you with them,
so we
right?
did little bits for that, and then the woman who produced that segment of the show ended up being commissioning editor for Children's BBC. So
I think we might come back to that later, the customers taking you with you. Terri, you found yourself unexpectedly self-employed, didn't you?
I did. It was about 9 years ago. I found myself as a single mum with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old and an ex-husband who was nowhere to be found. So I didn't really have a choice. There's no real job you can get when you can only work from like 9:30 till 2:45. And I needed to do something. I had been employed in various places. I'd run my own business as a video production company for several years. I'd done quite a lot of stuff. So I started out with a company that I called Admin Angels, and I was doing business administration for companies. It was all very good, but so boring, I can't even describe. And as many of you are freelancers, you'll know that if you're working from home, it's hard enough as it is, and if you're not interested in what you're doing, you might as well just stay in bed. So I had to then sort of reinvent myself. I had been working as a writer for a long time before that, publishing magazines and things like that. So I started working on blogs and on websites. I taught myself SEO and doing all that sort of thing. And that went really well for a long time. But I think, as you said, I found that I was spending so much time writing for other people, I stopped writing what I wanted to write. I lost that creative edge. I was so busy writing about kitchen splashbacks and fake grass that I'd lost any will to write anything creative and any short stories. So I actually just stopped overnight. I'd worked in radio a little bit, and people seemed to like my voice. They recognise my voice wherever I go. So I thought, let's do some voiceovers. That's a place I can go to. I invested a lot of money into it, as I said, at the beginning of 2020. Then wonderful COVID tripped along, everyone went into lockdown, and everyone, with all their agents and all the actors and everything who were already established, went, oh, we're going to go into voiceovers. So I was like, okay, let's put that to one side for a bit, and I ended up writing a book and getting it published instead. So now...
Available from all good booksellers.
Well, Amazon, yeah. So this has gone quite well. I'm working on the second one of this. I'm also working on a screenplay of this, and I'm also working on a different series. This is more adult horror, sort of Stephen King-esque, and I'm working on what is now turning out to be more of a YA kind of weird horror romance thing, and I don't know really where it's going, but there's those things that I'm working on now. So
Well, we'll just leave them in suspense. Rebecca, you went self-employed to kind of preserve your own sanity, didn't you?
Absolutely did. So I've always been very strong-willed and independent-minded, and my motivation to want to have control of my own life, and at the time, belief that it was to build a business, was because I wanted a dog, and my parents, when I was a kid, said, we can't have a dog because there's nobody at home to look after it. And I said, well, why can't you take it to work? And my mum said, because you can't take a dog to work. So I said, right, I'm going to set up my own company so I can take my dog to work. So roll forward 15 years later, and I established a company with my mum. We took an opportunity to become outsourced departments to our former employers. So we took the creative design studio and the mailing fulfillment, and we started to offer those direct mail services for ourselves. Yes, and within 2 months of having set that company up, I had got the dog in the office and around the warehouse. So objective complete.
There's a but, though.
Yeah. However, what I found, because my drive and ambition was initially, this is about having control of my life and being able to put my graphic design skills into practice, and to start with it was great, but obviously if you do a good job you get more work, and so you grow the business. And roll that forward, I had a team of 50 people, and I spent pretty much most of my life just looking after them. I had given away the job that I loved doing, so all of the design and working on the strategy with the clients. I had other people within the team doing that. And then I would sit there and watch them doing the job that I loved, and never quite doing it as well as I would want to do it. So started to lose touch with my sanity. I think when I look back on it, I'd been in burnout for about 5 years, but I hadn't really registered it because I'd become addicted to the stress. I'd become addicted to the chemical flood of the stress in my body. So what would happen is that as the workload and the pressure dropped, I would create more drama. And it just built on layer upon layer upon layer, and that started to encroach into my personal life as well. So I wasn't just growing the business and looking after the team. I then took on ginormous challenges. I walked 100 kilometres from London to Brighton. I took on 2 rescue dogs that were highly demanding. I was renovating a house, and I also decided to do a master's degree in advanced business strategy. So not surprising, 5 years of burnout, got to the point, actually, whilst on my master's degree, looking at my business strategy and reflecting on my own business strategy, and thought, my strategy should just be go with the flow. So I actually then executed a plan to sell off the big part of the business and the brand and assets, and along with that went the building and the team and everything, and that just left myself and, at the time, my mum, who was still my business partner. And so, whole new life.
Yeah, and I'm going to get you to hold it there, because did everything then just miraculously go happily ever after for all 5 of us as soon as we went freelance? Watch this space. As you ask the questions, we will start to reveal more of what happened in the story. But newbies, any questions about going freelance, finding yourself suddenly freelance? What can we share with you? Because this is all about the questions. Any questions from the newbies?
There's one over here.
Yeah.
There we go.
We've got the magic cube coming to you.
I come from working in the NHS basically, and I'm looking at trying to change, moving forward, musician, songwriter. What gave you the confidence to break out if you were in a mainstream profession? What gives you the confidence to break out of that and to also have that kind of time where you don't know necessarily what's coming in and what's going out? Because you have to make that kind of, you have to give yourself that time to bring it back. So what gave you the confidence to do that, basically?
I didn't catch your name.
Oh, I'm Beth. Sorry.
Beth.
Yeah, sorry.
Beth, I think are you happy
Did you say
if
you're a songwriter, a musician, yeah? Yeah. It's the arrogance of youth. It was 30 years ago. But what I would say to myself 30 years ago is something that I didn't take advantage of and that is far more available now is the ability to just create, just write, record, find if you don't record and you're not into the tech yourself, find a collaborator. That's what the point of Richie and I working together. I was always the one that plugged everything in back at school. Write and record and find an outlet through places like Audio Network, which is a fantastic music library, and that's the one thing I wish that we had done. We've only started doing it in recent years. We have a couple of albums worth of library music now, and that brings in residuals every 3 months. And if you start that, then you can start to turn it into a career. You can start to give yourself that buffer. Allow yourself, as Rebecca was saying, allow yourself to not be busy, because the constant guilt when you're freelance and self-employed of I should be busy, I should be doing something. If you've got residuals, if you've got a bunch of library music out there that is earning you an income, then it gives you the chance to just pursue stuff for its own end. So, and even a lot of people who you would consider to be like commercially successful, they still generate library music, and lots of stuff is chopped up into stems and placed as library as well these days. So.
And of course that builds over time. So we're not going to lie, the initial income is going to be lower than you would like it to be.
Well, you've got to remember as well, you've got other skills, and you can always be self-employed in other fields at the same time. You don't have to do one thing at a time. So if you have other skills that you could apply to something else, and you can be self-employed as lots of different things, you can sort of
build your portfolio career.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is one thing that's worth saying. Once you're a sole trader, you don't have to be specific about what that trade is. So if you wanted to be part writer, composer, and part healthcare worker or whatever it is you do for the NHS right now, but on a self-employed supply basis, then once you're self-employed, you can do that. You have an income stream, but for a sole trader, you are your business is you. And Cassie's done no end of things on her sole trader identity. I think we all have over the years. So you can blend that. And then over time, of course, Beth, what you're looking for is to tweak the income so that more of the income comes from the bit you love and less of the income comes from the bit that you're doing for the bread and butter so that your bills are paid and you can go on holiday and you're not worrying about money. Because if you're a freelancer, lying awake at night worrying about money is not fun. So it's about maximizing your income streams. And then once you can, refocus that effort and getting the income from the thing that you love so you wake up every morning raring to go to work. And it sounds crazy to say that, but I do. I don't know how you guys. Does that answer your question, Beth?
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Any more newbie or fairly new questions? Yes. Oh, David, can you how far can you throw that thing?
Can you like the crowd surf it across the crowd?
He's taking the safety first approach.
You can get your aerobic exercise in for the day.
Yay.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Andy, and I've just I've been interested in filmmaking forever, I guess, and I used to work for a university for a number of years, and prior to that I was actually self-employed, but I found that I spent a lot of time on my own in front of a computer doing all sorts of things, and so I ended up lecturing and doing all sorts of other things, and then anyway, I'm very excited to be self-employed again, because you know, the ball and chain's gone now. I don't have to ask anyone if I...
Welcome to the rest of your life.
I don't have to ask anyone if I want to go on holiday or whatever. Obviously, I want to be able to ensure that I can earn an income on a monthly basis and pay all the bills, etc. But my question is kind of slightly outside of that. I recently was asked by a young man who wanted to do a work placement. And I've helped people on work placement before in my job at a university. You know, he was interested in coming to do some bits and pieces with me, particularly around sound. And I wanted to, you know, enable that. But I just wondered if anyone else had done that before or not, and you know, what the path to doing that is, because I know there's a lot of sort of legislation around having signs up on the walls and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Any advice around that would be really gratefully accepted.
So we've had, at Chaos Films, we've had work experience students.
Just one thing to add is I'm, you know, a sole trader.
Yes.
So you know, I think it's probably different if you're a limited company or something.
I am a limited company now, but I'm a limited company of one. But when we started taking work experience students, I was a sole trader at that time. So we rebranded about 3 years ago, something like that. I say we, this is me and this band of freelancers. So it'd still all be one person, but when I was a sole trader, my clients got bigger and bigger. And they found it very difficult to deal with other sole traders on an accounting basis. So if we talk about money pain later, that's some money pain I went through, and it took a long time to sort it. Eventually, I decided to become a limited company, even though there's only one of me, purely to navigate the financial systems of my clients. However, when I did work experience, I did it as a sole trader. You do have to work closely with the school. And the school told me I needed employer's insurance, and I said I don't have employer's insurance because, in fact, there's one of me. But I do have public liability, so I have all the appropriate insurances in place. So I had a look at employer's liability insurance, and it doesn't cover people under 16 anyway. So I brought this to the attention of the school, and they kind of went, oh, wow. Because we've actually been sending our students out, but even had I got employer's insurance, it wouldn't have covered this student. Wow. So then I worked with them, and we got them, I phoned my insurance company, and we got it agreed that this student was a visitor to the sites where I was working, and as a visitor was covered by my public liability. I would encourage you to talk to the school or college that the young person belongs to, and to get this in writing from your insurer, because obviously many flavours of insurance are available. But that's how we did it in my case. And then, in fact, the same student came back again 3 years later. I'm looking at one of my partners in crime here, and did another work experience shift with us, and is now very happily self-employed as a media creative himself. And it's a lovely, lovely thing to do. We can't do it all the time, but we do when we can. So if that's something you would like to do, then talk to people, sort out the paperwork, sort out the insurance. That's what stops fun things happening in the world.
Thank you.
But it can be sorted.
That was so useful. Great. Really.
Great.
I shall pursue that.
Lovely. Right, we're starting to open up from the newbie questions now. So before we move on to another topic, do you want to lead us on to another topic? Is there anything that's keeping you awake at night? Is there anything that you are spending far too much time trying to sort out, like this maybe? That maybe one of us has been there before. So hands up if you have a question on any topic. They're keeping you busy, aren't they? David, what does your step counter say right now? We'll check it again at the end of the session. So, hello, person in the dark at the top. Who are you and what is your...
Hello.
Can't see anything.
Hi, I'm Lucy, and I have been freelancing or self-employed for a little while, but I guess I'm thinking about how to manage time every day and every week. And as a self-employed person, it's not just the thing that you love to do, which is creative for me. It's creating landscape designs. It's the managing accounts, it's the marketing, it's the web, it's the everything else that goes into that one role. So burnout was mentioned earlier, and as an employee, you might be covered for holiday pay, you might be covered for health insurance, whatever was mentioned before. And moving into the space of being self-employed, you're kind of taking a risk of all of those things that you won't get as a given from your employer, but also being able to manage your time of when to know to take a holiday, when to know when the best time is to do your accounts in your month, and when to prioritize the time where you need to do the work that gets paid. So I just wondered how you guys manage your time effectively. That's quite a big question.
No, you have to acknowledge that as freelancers, we are everything in our business. Who's the marketing department? Who's the accounts department? Who's the actual worker doing the stuff? Who's the manager managing the stuff? Who's selling the stuff? Who's doing all the other things that keep a business running? So the first thing to do is to just acknowledge to yourself that you are all those things, but do not forget that you are a creative, and that is the most important thing. That's the thing we're trying to maximize. Everything else we're doing because we have to, but we also, it's worth spending time on finding out how to minimize those other, sometimes quite annoying things. So, Rebecca, I think you are raring to jump in.
Well, I was going to say, I have my F system. So when I...
That sounds rude.
Yeah, well, basically, well, firstly I would say, going back to what I said, I wish somebody had told me it was okay to not be busy, because in reality, you will go through quiet periods, and then you will go through incredibly busy periods, but actually just really embrace those quiet periods, because there is going to be something else to come. And it can feel a bit uncomfortable as a new freelancer with the fact of panic. So, I mean, when I first exited the big business, started freelancing, my first month of freelance, because I'd still got residual coming through from having day one, I invoiced £18,000 in the first month. And then the next month, I invoiced very little. And I freaked out. I absolutely freaked out. Like, oh my God, I've not invoiced anything this month. I'd invoiced £18,000 the month before. My brain had not registered. That's okay, just enjoy a quiet month. It's absolutely fine. But anyway, yes, going back to my F system, when I sit down in the morning, I work through my to-do list, and I will have my client-based actions, and I will have my things that I need to do from the business perspective. So we talked about accounts and marketing and all of these other things. And then when I sit down on the time, I will determine which F it is. Is this a focused time? Am I working on a client piece of work? It's high priority, and it's going to bill money, so it's focused. I am not going to look at anything else during that time. I'm going to avoid distractions. Is it a faff time? So I'm going to give myself an hour of faff. So in this hour of faff, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to look at all those little faffy emails that come in, all of those little things that I need to respond to. So I have my faff time. Then I have my freedom time. So my freedom time is, right, I'm now going to set aside a couple of hours where I'm going to be free. I'm going to have free flow. I'm going to create something. I might do a painting, or I've just started having a little play around with air dry clay. It's just freedom. It's some time for me to just connect with my creativity without a real purpose, just freedom. And then I have my F off time, which is I'm not doing anything at all. I'm just going to go. And I'm a huge fan of yoga. I try to do yoga at least 5 or 6 times a week. I schedule that in my diary as though it is an appointment. And if a client contacts me and wants that time from me, I will tell them that I am busy. You know, I have another priority, and I make sure that that time is there, and that is there for me, because I don't want to push myself back into that burnout zone. So yeah, follow the F system. That's
Rebecca is very focused on staying well in the first place and nurturing all the different parts of the business that need nurturing. And remember, I said you are the business, and the business is you. So that's one way. I also have to, at the moment, plug the course as well, because the course acknowledges that you are doing all this stuff that is not your reason for being. And in order to minimize it, you need to understand it and find efficient ways to get rid of it, get through it, get it done. So I would really plug the course, which I will tell you about later, because it's been put together by the Open University Business School experts who know how to do the stuff, and freelancers who have had to be doing the stuff. And hopefully that will help you to see what needs to be done and how quickest to get it out of your way, so that you have more creative time and more nurturing time for yourself, so that you don't reach that burnout of just everything getting on top of you. And I think we've all been there as freelancers. Anything to add to that about?
I think being really flexible is really important.
Another F.
Thank
you, Cass.
Yeah.
Adding to the F system.
I like the F system. I'm
I'm
making
going to
that.
employ it. I think you have to be flexible when you're self-employed, and you can imagine a structure for a day. That doesn't mean that's how it's going to go, because you will always have clients that need something immediately, or you'll have an idea that you just can't wait to get down on paper. So, it can be quite scary. It's scary to manage your time as a freelancer, because you're constantly winging it a little bit, as well as trying to be organised, because you have to have that winging it built in almost. So flexibility is really important, and I use online softwares a lot for project management and things like that, and they can be really useful. And allowing yourself, as you were saying, to have that creativity time is really important. So I'll have a day a week that's just painting time, and I'll not look at emails, I'll not do anything else. And that's really hard. You feel very guilty, and it's only recently I've given myself that time, really. But you do have to have that time, or you burn out, or your creativity dips, and ultimately that's what you do for a living. You're trying to be creative, and you have to keep that going.
I will also admit to a non-F, which is procrastinating, but faffing in a bad way, I suppose.
Procrastination.
In that I could have much earlier embraced a lot of stuff that would have helped me get through the non-creative stuff faster. But I didn't want to learn how to use an accounting package, or I didn't want to learn how to use a project management package or something. And so I pushed it aside, and I carried on doing things in a disorganized way that took me longer than it would have taken to just set aside a day even, grab it by the horns, sort it out, and then it's done. Oh, the relief when it is.
I think it's also important to acknowledge that you don't have to do everything. There are a whole range of freelancers out there, not just creative freelancers. There are freelance bookkeepers, and there are other people who may be best placed to do something. So don't be afraid to invest money in working with other associates and other freelancers, because actually it might take them a fraction of the time it would take you. You've got to consider your own worth. What is your value? What is the best value of that use of time? Could I be earning however many hundreds of pounds an hour doing this thing, or could I be sat doing my bookkeeping that I could pay somebody £50 an hour to do? And you go,
Very expensive bookkeeping.
I was going to say that's very expensive bookkeeping.
I was just putting figures out my head. I do my own bookkeeping.
Getting a bookkeeper is sage advice. You should do it, because the bookkeeping is always going to be down your list, isn't it? And paying for a couple of hours of bookkeeping a week will hold you to having to keep your invoices and your records in order. So it
Yeah.
cuts out the faff and things.
And talking of things in order, my accountant is a freelancer, so she understands me. She understands my business. She understands that my income will be here 1 minute and then below the floor the next minute. She understands all that, and then now I've got the app and everything goes into that, and then I don't really see so much of it, and I'm happier for not seeing so much of it. Does that answer your question, Lucy? Good. Right, how far can we make David walk for the next question? David, where are you?
He's run off.
Oh, it's a nearby question, but we'll take it anyway.
Hello. I'm very interesting. I'm a bookkeeper, actually, if anyone wants to talk to me.
Oh,
And I don't charge £50 an hour. My question is about pricing, actually. So I'm beginning my creative journey alongside my earning some proper money job, but that's a freelance as well. When you set your pricing and people argue about your pricing, how do you keep the confidence to know that you're, how do you keep your value without sort of buckling and saying, well, actually, I'd rather have the business?
Yeah. That is an excellent question, and as freelancers, it's hard to say no. Incidentally, on the course, there's a whole section on whether or not you need to say no to this for lots of good reasons in terms of pricing. There's a whole week on pricing. Well, when I say a week, it's like 3 hours. But there's a whole section on that. Because this is tricky stuff. Don't get me wrong, this is really tricky stuff. There's 5 of us. We're going to give you 5 different answers, but they're all right because they're all working for us right now. So I think the essence is to decide how you're going to value your services. I'll let the others have a chat, and then I'll just round it up at the end with an experience I recently had, not myself, but a friend. So, you're always saying, don't
undervalue your work. You're not just doing something on an hourly rate. You are creating something that you're being employed to create because of your reputation or what you bring to the situation creatively. You charge.
In this case, it's avoiding prison. It's helping people to avoid prison.
You charge what the market will bear and what you're expected to charge, because you will be sometimes underpricing yourself makes people consider it to be not as good a product, not as good a service. And it also depends. I mean, what we bill for a kids' TV show is way less than what I would bill for, or be able to and be expected to bill for a commercial project like an award ceremony or something like that, which is just not as cool, not seen as by as many people, but it's a private marketing company is buying that for a brand, rather than it being kids' TV who have their day rates that they're obliged to charge. Do your research on what is billable within the different sectors that you sell to, what the market will bear in different sectors. And it is a case of trying to understand. It's a chicken and egg situation. You've got to try and understand your client's budget and what you're prepared to do for that, and what the opportunity cost of taking the work on. So you say don't be shy of turning stuff down. If you're busy, then clearly taking on a project, there is an opportunity cost to that, because you're blocking yourself out and having to turn things down. And if you've promised to do it for a fraction of what you would be working on for the thing that you're turning down, then that's, disappointing.
Yeah. One of the difficult things is also, when you're looking at other people's prices, it can be really difficult to determine exactly what's included and what's not included in that price. So it's difficult to know if you're giving more for that hourly rate, daily rate, contract rate, whatever it is you're offering, or if you're giving less, or if you're giving the same, and the value of what it is you're giving. And that's a difficult bit to get to, is the value of what you're giving and what the market will bear. Anything else on that?
For the people who actually make, you make a visual thing, whereas a lot of what we're involved with is a project.
Well, that used to be how I did things. I used to be a graphic designer, and I'd do projects, and working out a project cost was always really tricky. You having to sort of build in everything that you're going to bill and justify it almost. But I remember early on in graphic design, somebody that I worked with who'd been doing it for 10 years charged less than me per hour. And I walked in day one and was like, I'm going to charge this per hour. And he laughed at me and said, you never get that per hour. And I did. And I got more work than him and better work than him.
Yeah.
And it made him rethink what he was doing, because when you value yourself, other people value you too, and they see value in you. You don't have to back that up with good work. You can't, just take the money and run. But valuing yourself does reassure people in some ways that you're doing a good job. And I also remember being a freelancer for an agency, and I had a real issue with somebody that I worked with there, and a lot of people did. And I left saying, I don't want to work here anymore. And they came back to me and said, what do we need to pay you for you to come back? And that again made me think, there's always flexibility there.
Yeah.
And you should be brave enough to value yourself and talk about your costs.
Can you believe we're nearly out of time?
Oh,
but I just want to help on this question. I just want a quick show of hands. Has anyone else noticed that the customers who pay you the least are the most hassle?
Always. Always.
Oh, yes. So if you were thinking of going down the cheapest route,
Don't do it.
think again. The other thing is that if you are in a situation where you've decided to be very, very low cost, there are ways of getting the cost up without upsetting your existing customers. More on the course, and I think we ought to say thank you to everybody now and let everybody get, because we don't want to make them late for their mookie lunch. But I hope you've got answers to your questions, and there's loads more to be had from this conversation, which I will pick up with in a moment. But for now, can I ask you to thank Cassie Leedham, Matt Katz, Rebecca Harling and Terri Brown. So I promised to point you to some more resources before I leave you, and here they are. So we mentioned for the newbies, the chamber courses. There's also the Jumpstart course. Go and find those on social media or just Google it. They are fabulous as a start. And they will get you legal and registered and all above board. And then it's the, now what do I do? Then it's a good time to go to the Open University course. When you get to the Open University course, you will think this is for beginners. And in a way it is, because it tries to cover everything. You can skip the bits you don't need. And go to the bits you do. So I've been self-employed for 27 years, and at the end of the chapters, I am still finding stuff I never knew existed, like podcasts for freelancers, legal advice, all sorts of amazing resources that I didn't even know existed. So that's well worth a dip into. And of course, you will see the 11 amazing humans, 4 of whom you've just met, some of the rest of whom are also in the auditorium today. And their collective knowledge is just priceless. It really is. So no matter how long you've been freelance, do have a dip in there as well. And the Coventry and Warwickshire Creative Freelance Initiative is another thing I need to point you to. But I know nothing about this. So I am now going to hand over to Sarah, who's the MD of Fresh Seed, to tell you more about that. But thank you so much for your attention and your questions. And it's been so good to be freelancers together. And I just want to leave you with this one thought before I go. Freelancing does not mean going it alone, even if you're a sole trader. We're all here, okay? We're everywhere. So thank you very much indeed. Sarah.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll agree that was absolutely fantastic and so great to hear from real fabulous freelancers live doing it. So I'm going to hope that if I do that, yes, brilliant, it works. It's fabulous, isn't it, when it works, when you haven't practiced. Anyway, this is what's called winging it, everybody. So I wanted to talk you through what we've been building on. When I say we, there's a few people involved. There's the Coventry and Warwickshire LEP, there's the local council, there's Amy, who's sitting over there, who I said I'd embarrass. And we did a talk last year, Amy and I, and this is building on that work that we have done. So this is launching the pilot project that for the region, for the Coventry and Warwickshire freelancers. And it's what we want you to do is to understand what's available to you. We're building on the work that we talked to you about last year. We took lots and lots of feedback from you, and this is a continuation of that. I won't talk you through too much of what's on the slide because you can see that. But what we are hoping to achieve through this is building on network, so pulling that together to give you a central resource to know where they all are. If you're new and you're starting out in this world, you can find it. There's a website around somewhere, and we'll show you. If it isn't on this slide, we'll get it sent around on comms. It's promoting your work for you and what's available for you to find, because what we often find for the freelancer community in this region is you don't always get to hear about the great work that's available regionally, so that's what we're trying to do. Business support is coming, it's in discussion, it's being built, it's really exciting. And then lobbying, wow, I've done loads of papers for government to get your recognition, particularly in this region. And I can tell you I've had the most bonkers conversations with people as a result of that paper, those papers that were written for you early in the first start of the pandemic. So what can you do? You can find out more information there. There's the link. On there, there's also a survey, and we need you to fill in the survey. The more people that fill in that survey, the more feedback and information we get. So go to that site, find the information and spread it amongst everyone and get some feedback, because the more we get, the more information we can give to you, and we can feed some great stuff for you. And that's really what this is about, because we want to leave a legacy for freelancers in this region. And if I do one thing in this life, it's that. So I hope that gives you everything. Go and enjoy your lunch.